Yeah. Hey, I'm at the floodplains to the south of Wageningen. I'm Jason, by the way, and I'm here together with Hidde and Jimmy. We're going for a swim afterwards, and that's very easy. It's very close. It's about 1 kilometer that way. In total, the floodplains have a lot of flowers. It's quite an important nature area. In cases when there's high water, they let the floodplains flood. In total, the floodplains is about 2 square kilometers, and it stretches all the way to Renkum. And currently we are on the Gebbedijk, and the Gebbedijk is one of the primary defenses after the floodplains. And they manage the water here with a few different structures. One you can see over there, that's a pumping station, but I'll tell you more about that later. Since it's nice weather outside, you can also see people walking through the floodplains. It's a nice nature area. Also quite interesting. The whole area here is a protected nature area, and as you can see over there, the flowers are already blooming, and on the Gebbedijk a lot of people use this recreation. As I already mentioned, people also walk through the floodplains, and the Gebbedijk stretches for around 5 kilometers, and it crosses the border with Utrecht. Over here we have the harbor of Wageningen. In the harbor there are 2 big companies, and that is the animal food producer and Brouw. Brouw does all sorts of stuff with sand and clay and rocks here in the harbor. The ships can follow the way over there and eventually come in the Nederrijn. In the Nederrijn is an aftakking from the normal Rijn, which enters the Netherlands at Lobit. And as we can see from here, if you watch over the floodplains, in the back you see multiple houses, and if there's high water, the water reaches still their front garden. So in that case they have to move their cars, and they have to remove their containers. We're currently at Gemaal Papsendam, but I'll tell you a bit more about that later. If we walk over here, we can see a water measuring height, and we can see a weir. The weir makes sure that the water levels in the floodplains itself stay at a sufficient level, so that the soil doesn't get too dry. As you can see here, there's a small stream, and the weir makes sure that the water level in front of the weir is higher than below that. From here, underneath the road until the pumping station, there's a small channel underneath it, and in that channel there's a valve that they can close off in order to make sure that water from the harbor doesn't flow into the floodplains. But if water levels get measured at Lobit, that's where the Rijn enters the Netherlands, at 11 meters or higher, then they send a warning to the waterboard over here, Vallei and Veluwe, that high water is coming. So they prepare the floodplains and the houses that I just showed, and they open the valve underneath here so that the water comes out over there, and then slowly the floodplains fill up, and they open the valve at a water height of 14.3 meters measured at Lobit. And when the floodplains are completely filled up, then they keep the water in the floodplains for a while, and when the Nederrijn can manage the water again, handle the water again, they use the pumping station in order to pump the water from here into the harbor, and then it gets exported to the Nederrijn, and eventually it comes out in the sea. And from the pumping station we have a different view at the Gebbedijk. As you can see, the Gebbedijk stretches all the way along Wageningen. And maybe also interesting is that the Gebbedijk is way higher than the houses behind it. And the houses behind it also have to keep strict regulations, and they can't build anything on the dike in order to make sure that the dike stays strong. And they're currently also working on strengthening the Gebbedijk, since there are new regulations in place. And according to those new regulations, the current Gebbedijk doesn't meet the terms of a safe dike. So they need to broaden the dike because to meet the requirements. If they heighten it, then the people in those houses don't have a view anymore, and they would probably complain. Okay, now we're a bit more deeper into the floodplains. As you can see, there are quite a lot of bikes, quite a lot of bins for all the people who sit at the water. And as you can see over there, the house there is on quite a hill. So in the case that there is high water, that the houses won't get flooded. But what is interesting is that if there's high water, they cannot go back by bike. They have to go by boat. But what's beneficial for them is that their house is as high as the Gebbedijk. So if their house floods, then at least the entirety of Wageningen probably gets flooded. Okay, so now we're on the end of the floodplains, and you're very near to the water over here, and you can see that the water can easily overflow here. But if you go further to the back, there's a hill that protects the water from infiltrating the floodplains any further. Okay, so currently we're on the Veerweg. Over there in the future we can see the Gebbedijk, in the distance we can see the Gebbedijk. The houses on the Veerweg are situated directly next to the floodplains. And when the floodplains are completely filled up, it can actually happen that the cycling path over here gets completely flooded and they have to move the cars over there. But what is interesting, when the houses are over here, since they are on a hill, get flooded, the entirety of Wageningen gets flooded as well. Okay, so another example of the importance of nature in this area. Over here there's a sign that tells birds area and peaceful area, and that you have no access in it in spring and partially in the summer. You can actually see that there flows quite a lot of water through the floodplains. Keep the area wet and moist. We're once again pretty close to the water. The floodplains here are quite low actually. And what is also very important here is that there walk cows and horses over here, as the sign in front of me tells. And therefore it's very important not to leave any garbage and trash in this area, since they could eat it and get ill from it. Okay, currently we're quite close to the water. As you can see here, we are at one of the main valves. As you can see, the gates over here are rather large, and when the water levels are pretty high, then they can open these valves, and underneath here the water can flow towards here, so that it flows directly into the floodplains. But what is quite interesting as well is that over here, if you walk a bit towards here, we can actually see that there's a house over here as well, and the house is called the White House for obvious reasons. And in that house the former Minister of Finance lives, and in an interview he had a quite special view on how the area should be managed. He sees it as a privilege to be able to be living here, and his house is rather safe because he's on a small hill. But when the area is flooded, he needs to go towards the land by boat. But he actually rather likes that because he thinks the nature has the main privilege of being here, and he is blessed by being able to live here. So that's quite interesting, actually. Well, hopefully you learned something today about during watching the vlog. Hopefully you enjoyed it, and have a nice day.